City of Beaumont City Council meeting for Tuesday, November 21st. And call to order at 5:02. No, I'm sorry, 4:11. Oh.
No.
What's what it says on my...
It's the bubble.
5:02. Okay.
Okay. Councilmember Santos is...
He's out, excused. He had a
That's right.
trip planned before he got on council.
Councilmember Martinez?
Here.
Councilmember Lara?
Here, no trip plan.
Mayor Pro Tem Carroll?
Here.
Mayor White?
Here. And do we have any public comments?
I do not.
Julie? Okay. So we'll, Mr. Pinckney, did you want to read the items for closed session?
Yes, closed session will be item 2, conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D1, 2, and/or 3 regarding potential litigation, legal proceedings by the Preserve LLC to enforce the stay in the Preserve LLC Chapter 11 case number 608BK23006 BB, 1 potential case. And also as item 3, public employee appointment pursuant to Government Code Section 54957. The title is the Assistant City Manager. And 4, conference with labor negotiator pursuant to Government Code Section 54957.6. The city designated representative is City Manager Todd Parton, and the unrepresented prospective employee is the Assistant City Manager. That's it.
All right, we'll go ahead and adjourn to closed session at 5:04. All right, we'll call back to order the City Council meeting for the City of Beaumont for Tuesday, November 21st at 6:12.
I'll do a roll call if you're ready.
Yes, please.
Councilmember Santos is absent. Councilmember Martinez?
Here.
Councilmember Lara?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Carroll?
Here.
Mayor White?
Here. And a report out from closed session, Mr. Pinckney.
The council met in closed session. Item 2 was conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D1, 2, and/or 3 regarding potential litigation, legal proceedings by the Preserve LLC to enforce the stay in the Preserve LLC Chapter 11 case number 608BK23006 BB, 1 potential case. There was no reportable action. Item 3, public employee appointment pursuant to Government Code Section 54957, title, Assistant City Manager, no reportable action taken. Item number 4, conference with labor negotiator pursuant to Government Code Section 54957.6, city designated representative, City Manager Todd Parton, unrepresented prospective employee, Assistant City Manager, no reportable action taken on that item either.
So we have no action on any closed items. Regarding excused absence, Mr. Santos is on a trip that he had planned before we appointed him to council. So that's his excused absence. We all good with that?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. And Mr. Parton, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Please join in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Any adjustments to the agenda? All right. Any conflicts of interest to disclose? So we'll move on to our first item, which is introduction of our new police department employees.
Evening, Mayor and Council. First, I'll introduce an officer who couldn't make it today before I introduce our new deputy chief. So we also hired Officer Dan Lee, sworn in yesterday as well. He previously worked for us for about 5 or so years when into the Riverside Police Department. Said I miss being part of the Beaumont family. Asked him to come back. He's a great officer. Including who's here. Said sure, come back. So he comes with us with about 9 years of experience. So he just really, we talked about this yesterday. You know, when when employees know, hey, I left a good thing, thought something else would be great, which I'm sure it was, but you realize that Beaumont just has something special about it. So it is really a testament to what we've done here in the last several years. And then moving on to Anthony Monadera, I'll just introduce him briefly and I'll let him speak on his own behalf, but he improved in this budget to recruit a deputy chief to oversee operations of the department under my supervision. So we cast a very wide net. We actually attracted some very high-quality applicants. We're pretty impressed with that. But who rose to the top was Anthony. He comes to us from the San Diego County Sheriff's Department with 28 years' experience. He actually oversaw the Rancho Cucamonga Station, which is probably about 3 times our size. And then most recently, for the last couple of years, he was the captain over the Iowa Station as their chief of police. So, speak to himself and introduce his family, if you may.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and council members. Thank you for this opportunity to serve in this capacity. My pledge to you and to the citizens of Beaumont is I will serve with integrity, honor, and conviction. And I am so proud to be here. This is where I need to be. So thank you for this opportunity. I'd like to take a moment to introduce my lovely wife, Sarah Onadera, right here, and my daughter, Alex Onadera. My son, unfortunately, could not be here today, but he is very proud of this opportunity that you provided me. So thank you very much.
Can we get a picture of you with us?
I exceeded 3 minutes.
We'll let it slide this time.
Don't make a habit of it.
Do you mind having your family join us?
I would love to.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Hi.
So lovely to have you here.
Thank you. We're so proud and we're very happy.
One, two, three. Perfect.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Look forward.
Welcome.
Thanks all. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing it.
All right, so now we'll move on to public comments and open the public comment period at 6:17. Any one person may address the city council on any matter not on this agenda. If you wish to speak, please fill out a public comment form provided at the back table and give to the city clerk. There's a 3-minute time limit on public comments. There'll be no sharing or passing of time to another person, and state law prohibits the council from discussing or taking actions brought up by your comments. And do we have anyone here to speak?
Yes.
Okay.
Our first one is Robert Sherwood.
No, just real quick, I wanted to give a big thank you out to the group of people and retail stores in the city that have made our 2017 Senior Thanksgiving Outreach Donation Program possible. Real quick, we would like to thank Stater Brothers, Walmart, Aldi Foods, East Valley Association of Realtors, Freedom in Christ Church, Patrick D. Pillars, and all city employees. They've really made this program possible. It's going to be about 150 meals that will be boxed up and delivered on Thanksgiving Day. This will be the 20th year we've done it, so I'm proud of that program. It's done well, and again, with the local businesses that we had help us out and local people, there's been no use of any city funds on this. This is totally donated by the community. So anyways, just wanted to give a shout out to those businesses and everybody that made it possible.
Thank you, Bob.
Thanks.
Next speaker is Judy Bingham.
Judy Bingham, 115 Minnesota. The CPA Journal published an article on financial restatements because of fraud. Remember Enron? The SEC's final ruling requires Form 8K to be filed to announce restatements if the company or its auditor concludes that any previously issued financial statements should no longer be relied upon because of an error in such financial statements. On March 23, 2015, the Beaumont City Council was presented with the 2014 audited financial statements prepared by Moss Levy Hartzheim. The council rejected the audit because of the numerous fraudulent statements. The council was required at the time to direct their staff to prepare financial statements that were not fraudulent and submit them to a different auditing firm. The council chose instead to ignore the law and follow the wisdom of Mike Bush from Urban Futures. To this day, Beaumont's 2014 financial statement has never been properly presented or audited. Beaumont's 2015 financial statements received a disclaimer of opinion from the auditing firm of Van Lant Fankhanel because of the numerous fraudulent statements still contained in the city's financial statements. Beaumont's financial director, Milana Taylor, told council it was okay just copy numbers from the past, but that was a fraudulent statement, an intentional lie. When are you going to fire that woman? The city received, according to the Finance and Audit agenda, the city received an adverse opinion because the financial statements do not present fairly the financial position of the government activities of the city of Beaumont as of June 30th, 2016. I have been waiting 73 weeks for the 2016 general ledger. A big red flag, I'd say. When are you going to stop lying to the taxpayers about our money?
Do we have any other comments?
No other speakers.
Okay. We'll close the public comments at 6:22. And we'll move on to the consent calendar. Items on the consent calendar are taken as one action item unless an item is pulled for further discussion here or at the end of action items. Approval of all ordinances and resolutions to be read by title only. Do we have any public comments on the consent agenda?
Yes, I have two.
For which items?
For numbers 3 and 8.
Okay, are there any items that council would like to pull for discussion?
3 and 8, Mayor?
3 and 8.
Okay, I'm good.
I'll comment on 8 also.
Okay. So I'm going to make a motion that we approve the balance of the items, item number 2, 4, 5, 6, 7.
I'll second.
Councilmember Martinez?
Yes.
Councilmember Lara?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Carroll?
Yes.
Mayor White?
Yes. And now we'll go to item number 3, and we'll hear the public comment on item number 3. I'll open public comments for that item at 6:24.
Judy Bingham?
The first check on the warrant list is to Albert Webb and Associates for $25,000 for sewer upgrades and expansion. That brings the total paid to Webb up to $2,278,000. On June the 16th, 2015, Beaumont hired Webb to be the special tax consultant at the insistence of City Attorney John Pinckney and acting city manager, now transit director, Elizabeth Gibbs Urtiaga. The agenda item has now been removed from the city's website, and it needs to be returned. At the March 28, 2016 Beaumont City Council meeting, Albert A. Webb employee Brian Knoll first appeared and stated that he had been working on the city's sewer plant for about 4 weeks, but there was no contract or any evidence that Albert Webb had been hired to work on the sewer plant. The city had already hired both Interwest Consulting and Wildan Engineering to provide engineering services for the sewer plant. Webb was paid to create a fraudulent feasibility report. It was fraudulent because it did not include a financial feasibility study. On November 7th, 2016, Albert Webb and Associate was gifted $792,838 contract for the preliminary sewer design in an emergency meeting called by the newly elected councilmen who were installed. Beaumont has until December the 30th, 2017, to come up with what now $110 million in funding for the sewer plant. The city is depending on the State Water Board for the money, but the loan application status report shows that Beaumont has never submitted the technical, environmental, or financial packets to the state. And what was the first requirement of the state loan? 3 years of audited financial statements, the same ones I talked about in public comment. You don't have them. Where are you going to get the money?
Any other comments for that item?
No.
Okay. We'll close public comments at 6:27. Are there any other items, questions, or comments on item number 3? Are we on track to meet our December 31st, 2017 deadline? Okay, thank you. I'll move to pass item number 3.
I'll second.
Do I have just a minute? Okay, I'll do roll call. Councilmember Martinez,
Yes.
Councilmember Lara,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Carroll,
Yes.
and Mayor White.
Yes. And we'll go to item number 8. We have public comments on 8?
Yes.
Okay. I'll open the public comments on item number 8 at 6:27.
Judy Bingham.
Judy Bingham, 115 Minnesota. In the last few months, everyone on staff has gotten new vehicles and new computers and raises, none of which were allocated in the budget. Where is all this money coming from? It is illegal to collect Melrose CFD taxes for fire services, then spend the money on bling for the staff. If you had an honest lawyer or accountant, they would tell you that. Where is this money coming from? Is it developer mitigation fees that the city is wasting? Where is this money coming from? Or is it from the sewer fund, of which we don't have one?
I'll close, is that the last public comment?
Yes.
I'll close public comments at 6:28. Mr. Pardon, are we using CFD money for vehicles and computers and all of that other?
No, these items have been budgeted. They were included in part of the plan for expenditure for this year. So they're budgeted and they're the items that we've purchased. Now, this particular issue is really addressing surplus property items which are not functional or being used. For example, a lot of the IT items here are items that have been taken out of service for some time. So we're providing this list of items to be able to present to you to declare surplus so we can go through the process to look at really disposing of these.
Okay. And, you know, I've seen this happen often, a lot of different agencies declaring surplus property. Is that something that you have to do as far as accounting purposes as well?
Not here.
Okay.
We don't have a policy that requires us to come forward to request or have council declare items as surplus, but we wanted to present this to council for transparency, so y'all get an idea to look at what we're doing and what items we're declaring.
Okay.
So we can try to proceed forward, so you're aware of what we're doing.
Go ahead, Ms. Carroll.
This is much more detail than I've seen before on the surplus, where you define it like this by department and the part numbers, and it's much clearer. So I appreciate that.
Sure. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments?
Todd, I would just like to see, in addition to this that comes back to council annually, is that we have an internal policy, if you could put one together, that directs staff on how to handle things that are outdated, or I know, like, for example, in the county, we circulate, or our computers have a 3-year lifespan, and then there's a process that we go through to dispose of them or to surplus them. So just, as long as we have written guidelines for staff to follow, I think it helps with the transparency, if you would.
You betcha.
Mr. Martinez?
Yeah, basically on the IT, is there anything that's worthy of perhaps donation, or if these pretty much outdated beyond, like to a school district or to a nonprofit?
These are fairly old pieces of equipment. We're not necessarily restricted to the means by which we decide to dispose of these. And so if there were groups out there, that nonprofits or other agencies that may be interested in looking over this stuff, they could. You know, one of the key things is we would, you know, they definitely need to make sure we destroyed any hard drives or anything like that that had any kind of information on it. So you'd basically have a shell of a computer that would require some additional work. But a lot of this is really going to be outdated stuff that I'm not sure how functional, usable it would be for somebody else. But yeah, I think if there's another nonprofit or other governmental entity or other agency out there that'd be interested, they can come take a look at that.
Okay, thank you.
When we consider this in our company, often what we find is it costs the recipient more just to get it up and running.
Yeah, and when I looked at it, basically you're taking out what you can use and probably leaving the skeleton behind anyway. But I just thought maybe perhaps on the printers or such. But
Sure.
just an idea. Okay.
And
So-
what's the end result of all of this equipment? What do you end up with at the end in terms of recording what happens to it?
Well, we'll document whatever comes off. We'll be able to document where it goes. If something was sold, if it was, recycled, disposed of in some way. We'll be providing a detailed list back on what the allocation was for that particular item.
Thank you.
So you'll know. And this, and I hate to tell council this, but you guys are not eligible for any of these items. We're not going to let you take any of these. Staff is not eligible for any of these. So again, these are going to be disposed of in an appropriate manner.
Could I mention one thing? I really like, maybe, I don't know if you put in the budget, I've mentioned this once before, about the treasurer and the city clerk. It'd be nice if they had access to a computer over there so that they could, do things during the meetings. I know that when I was treasurer, I used to bring in my own laptop every meeting, but I don't know if you've got anything that would fit over there, but just before it actually gets out the door. Not that you're at the point of only being able to get disposal quality equipment, but I'd like to at least mention it while we're talking about recycling the equipment.
I think I know somebody who has one they can maybe borrow to us.
Just thought I'd bring it up. Thank you.
Mr. Lar, you had another question?
I did. I was, needless to say, I was slightly disappointed that I didn't see the laptops on that list, because I was suggest maybe Smithsonian.
Oh,
Suggestion.
Smithsonian would not accept them.
I did close public comment, right? Okay. I move to approve item number 8.
I'll second.
Councilmember Martinez?
Yes.
Councilmember Lara?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Carroll?
Yes.
Mayor White?
Yes. Item number 9, the second reading of an ordinance establishing the Development Impact Mitigation Fee Program and resolution imposing the amount of the 2017 Development Impact Mitigation Fee application to all Development Impact Mitigation Fee application, I think that's a duplication, to all developments in the city of Beaumont.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Before you tonight is the second reading of the ordinance to establish the impact fee mitigation program and the resolution to actually impose and adopt those fees. At the November 7th meeting, Council was presented the ordinance. We went over the different chapters within the actual nexus study or the fee study, and we detailed the different costs associated with each of those, the types of facilities that were going to be built under each of those chapters. At that meeting, Council voted to approve the ordinance at its first reading, and Council did direct staff to research 2 items as it related to that ordinance and the fee study. So we're happy to bring back those concerns that Council had from that initial meeting. Number 1 was we were asked to review the mobile home park statistics of per person per unit. So what we did was we looked at the data that was used, and that was used during a 2014 American Community Survey study, and it was showing 3.48 people per mobile home unit. And it seemed odd to us, it seemed odd to our consultant, but that's what the Census Bureau basically said was the standard, so we went with that, and that's what was included in the study. We did further research based on Council's concerns, and we found that the 2015 study brought the number back into basically an industry norm. So we found that study showed around 2.98 people per unit, and then we compared that to see kind of where we were at with the Riverside County average, and that was at 2.74. So we went ahead and we made that change to the 2.98, so a little bit less than 3 people per mobile home unit within the study, and that changed stuff a little bit. I can't say more than a couple dollars per fee. The reason why making that change did not move the mark very much on the single family or the multifamily units is the impact fee study, even the one that we proposed or presented at the last meeting, only did not anticipate any new mobile home parks or mobile home units actually being built within the city. So if you look at all of the chapters, when it talked about the revenue source, all future units were at 0 for mobile homes, and all future projected revenue in each of the impact fee chapters was all at 0. So it moved the needle just a little bit in terms of the demographics chapter, but we did want you to know that we're not anticipating mobile homes to be built. There's not much zoning allowed for them, and we're not relying on mobile home revenue to be covering the cost of these facilities. It's basically a 0 line item, but we did make sure that the actual fee study reflected the true data and the more appropriate data from that 2015 survey. So then next was we looked at community park construction costs, and this was kind of a fun one. So we reached out to multiple agencies, including our local regional, is that an oxymoron? So local regional park and rec district, and they reached out to their colleagues, and we received data back from them. We also searched for other municipalities and their fee studies, and to kind of see where we were. Were we out of the ballpark? Were we in the ballpark on these communities, so the large regional sports park types of complexes? And I provided a simple table in here that kind of shows you where we were at. We found studies that were a little bit old, so we went ahead and used Bureau of Labor Statistics and increased those into 2017 dollars, so we were comparing an apple and an apple. And at the end of the day, we found that if you average it across multiple communities, including the Paris fee study that was, I think, recently adopted in the city of Paris that the BIA used with some of their data last meeting. Our average is at 493, so really, really close, if not identical to the 500,000 number we were using before. And staff believes that the 500,000 per acre is attributed to around 415 to 417,000 for actual construction costs. And then when you add in the industry standards of design, soft costs, as well as contingency, and you include that as like a 20% line item, you're right at 500,000 per acre for these large types of parks. And you'll find that certain parks contained within the study documents that are here are a little bit more, and some are a little bit less, and that's based on different communities' level of standard. So some communities may not have a higher level of standard on what types of amenities are included in those parks. Some may have more, and that changes the ballpark. The hardest thing to do is find cities that were building new parks, believe it or not. I found a ton of fee studies or CIPs or budget items related to renovation of existing parks, but those all carried with it a very low cost as compared to building from scratch. So if you had to go out, grade, possibly replace dirt, do all of those types of things to start from scratch, that's where you're getting this 493 to 500 grand number. The other studies we saw showed 300 to 400, but those are for renovation of existing parks and so forth. So we do feel comfortable with the $500,000 per acre included in the study. I did include the original staff report from the first reading for your review. The findings related to Government Code Section 66001 require the agency establishing and increasing imposing impact fees to make these findings, and those are listed before you tonight in the staff report. And lastly, we talked about a little bit at this time and at length on the other fee studies we've done is there's certain administrative costs associated with implementation reporting of the Mitigation Fee Act. So staff is proposing the inclusion of a 1% administrative recovery charge to the proposed fees contained within this study. And those impact fee study, or the dollar amounts, including the admin fee, has been attached within that table. Staff does recommend that City Council, 1, hold a public hearing, and then 2, waive the full reading and adopt by substitution of title only an ordinance of the City Council of Beaumont establishing the 2017 Development Impact Fee Program at its second reading, including the 1% administrative cost recovery charge based upon the findings stipulated within the ordinance, and 3, waive the full reading and adopt by substitution of title only a resolution of the City Council of the City of Beaumont imposing the amount of the 2017 Development Impact Fee applicable to all developments within the city. And I can answer any questions, as well as the city's consultant for the Nexus study is here as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any public comments on this item?
Yes.
So let's open public comments at 6:42.
Clint Limore? I'm sorry, Laura Moore.
I go by Hey You as well, so it all works. Good evening, Mayor, Council. I wanted to follow up. At the last meeting, there was discussion about fire station sizes, and the fire chief came up and spoke eloquently on the subject. I did want to go through and show that we were not just pulling things out of the air, that these were backed up numbers. So as you will see, I believe you have in front of you some pages. It's 5 pages long. The first, it shows the cover where we got the information of the table that we had for acreage of fire stations. I should say that when I heard the fire chief saying that it was 2.5 to 3 acres, I was surprised because I thought that I was going off of a study from the county, which we were. So I went and checked with some other fire chiefs as well to double check myself. And they also said, yes, there is a standard associated with that of the 2.3, 2.5. That being said, we still started, we did our due diligence and we went back through, I had my consultant go and check what actually happens in practice in terms of acreage. And you can see that on the last page, and the amount of acres of fire stations, including those that were listed on page 2 of the projected fire stations, ones that had been built since the fire station was, since the study was done. So recently in Eastvale, for instance, we had a fire station 31 that was built at 1.75 acres. So when we heard 3 acres, we questioned that. And like I say, our consultant went through and produced them. Also, at the last meeting, there was discussion about a joint project. So only half a fire station, of the 3 fire stations, it's the development industry is being charged for 2.5. The half fire station, meaning one being half of it, the cost being covered by Banning, half by Beaumont. We looked into that. Beaumont has a specific plan, that's the Butterfield Ranch plan, and you will see that on page 3. And that's where, at least the cover page for it, the Butterfield specific plan, that was adopted in February 14th, 2017. And you will see there on page 4, the highlighted area. It says, it's very small, but it says 1.6 acres. Fire station, and it is listed in the study as 3. So again, we maintain that we question the 3 acres being proposed. As the fire chief said at the meeting, 2.5 acres. You will see the averages on the last page. So I submit that for your consideration. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other public comments?
No other speakers.
We'll close public comments at 6:45 and open up to questions or comments from council. Any comments or questions for staff?
I just have a question. If we did revise it to 2.5, how does that affect, or do we know how that would impact the fee? If we went to 2.5 acres on a fire station?
It would adjust it a little bit. I don't know exactly what the dollar amount would be, but we could make that change if council desires. We could also have the CAL Fire Chief, who's here tonight, respond in terms of that station. So I did look at I just got the stuff 2 or 3 minutes before the meeting. But I did look at it. The specific plan does call out for a fire station within the Butterfield specific plan around 1.6 acres. If you look closely on the diagram, there's a park right next to the site. So a lot of the fire stations that are less than that industry norm that CAL FIRE requires, the 2 to 3 acres, are because there's existing constraints on property. They're forced to go into an area that's a little bit smaller than the norm. In this case, there's a park directly adjacent to that fire station, and I can't speak for CAL FIRE, but when it comes down to it, if they're asking for 2 or 3 acres on Banning's side of the street, and there's ample room to adjust some park acreage to make sure that the fire station is adequate within the area, I would lead to believe they'll do so. But I'll leave that to CAL FIRE to chime in too. But if you'd like us to revise the acreage up or down in any way, shape, or form, of course we can do that.
Would the joint station that we would be working with Banning on, is that where we would suggest putting it, in that spot?
Well, originally CAL FIRE said to put one on our side in Sundance. And then I did some due diligence and I looked at where the other regional stations were, and I found one right across the street in Butterfield. So then I called Banning to make sure that that was true. They had it included in the specific plan, and their fee study included that station. So I thought it wouldn't be prudent to basically build 2 fire stations right across Highland Springs from each other. So we went ahead and talked to CAL FIRE about including it in our fee study, but only at half cost, knowing that we'll charge our residents for their impact on the station, but knowing that we'll end up jointly funding that facility with the city of Banning.
You know, I've heard a comment about size differences between a rural fire station and an urban fire station. And I'm looking at all the numbers here. some of them are really small, and I'm wondering when they were built, and what kind of service they provide. I like Mr. Laura's idea of going back to 2.5. I'm just thinking this one here wouldn't make sense to put a small fire station if we're going to be partnering with Banning on that, especially for that area of town, because there's so much, so many residents over there. If you add their 4,000 homes and what we have over there already. What's our closest fire station? This, the one on 6th Street.
I think it's 66.
66?
20.
That's serving Sundance right now. That's serving the Sundance area right now. Okay. Is that the one that's listed in the, there's a Beaumont station in here, right?
I think 66 is the one that's listed in the study, because that's
It
the
is.
current station that the city owns.
Yeah.
Okay.
Station 20 is not owned by the city, but
Right.
Okay.
partially funded by the city for operations.
All right. Any other comments or questions? All right.
I just appreciate Kyle going back and looking at all the numbers and giving me a better comfort level with that. Thank you.
So entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to waive the full reading and adopt by substitution title only an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Beaumont establishing the 2017 Development Impact Fee Program and its second reading, including the 1% administrative cost recovery charge based upon the findings stipulated within the ordinance, and waive the full reading and adopt by substitution of title only a resolution of the City Council of the City of Beaumont imposing the amount of the 2017 Development Impact Fee applicable to all developments in the city. And I didn't know if we wanted to, if we were considering making the adjustment from 3 acres to 2.5 acres.
All right, if you put that in your motion, I'll second that.
I'll go ahead and include that change.
Do we need to hear any comment from the chief concerning that? Or are we comfortable with that move from 3 to 2.5?
I'd be willing to listen to comments from the
I
chief.
just want to make sure I get a comfortable comment.
That's fine. And if I need to amend the motion, I can do so.
Okay, Chief, do you mind speaking to that? I'll second the motion.
Thank you.
Well, first of all, Mayor and Council, thank you for your interest in this. Todd, it's good to see you again, and when Mike Smith is on vacation, he calls his boss to come and back him up, so. There's a couple items I'd like to address, and I think Chief Smith was very eloquent in what he presented the reasons to you last meeting about why we, in the progressive planning of fire stations, look for a bigger facility. Many of those are, we look for a 40-year service life for a fire station to a community. So many times we take a community, and in hindsight, we try to park a fire station into an established community. And it was mentioned the Station 31 in Eastvale, which is a new facility in a reasonably new city, is on a very small lot. The reason that is we needed a fire station there. That was the only available land in the area to provide an adequate service response time to the community. And that fire station has no room to expand or beyond anything beyond a single fire engine, 3-person company. We like to look at how large a community is going to build out to and what the community is going to need for service 40 years down the road. 3 acres provides us room to expand to provide more than a fire engine company. A ladder truck company is in the future of Banning Beaumont. We have to realize that. That's 4 more bodies. A paramedic squad, a chief officer's office and barracks, all of the things that go with serving the community 40 years down the road. Foresight is so much harder to empower than hindsight. And I think it's important that you consider what you leave to your predecessors on how they manage public safety in their community. So 3 acres at an absolute minimum 2.5 acres because we have to have the ability to expand fire services. And I'll use Station 66 as an example. It is a facility that is extremely old. We have outgrown it. but we are making it work until we expand to another facility. We don't want to put my predecessors and your predecessors or your successors into that position down the road. And that's why in our plan we tried to build that. A heavy urban fire station is what we titled that as, is a 2.5 to 3 acre facility that we like to build. A light residential station, such as Station 31, is reasonable for that application. You have to look at the application for what it's intended. I hope I've answered some questions. If you have any others, please feel free. I'd like to alleviate any of your concerns.
Any questions?
Does the 2.5 acre allow you to have a ladder truck?
So that is the absolute minimum size for what we call a heavy urban fire station. 3 acres allows for some expansion, and I know in conversations with Todd that Mike and I have had, Chief Smith and I have had, we like to build expansion in there. I know Todd is desiring to have some training facilities for both police and fire, and maybe some expansion for some community policing room in some of these fire stations, which is, in my opinion, a very, very reasonable expectation of taxpayer money. It's money well spent, and you consolidate your public service into one area. And I commend the council and the city manager for having the foresight to at least bring this to the table for discussion. So many times I am standing at a podium trying to explain why we need a fire station in a neighborhood that only has 3/4 of an acre and why you're limiting yourself in doing that. And I enjoy these types of discussions in education.
Question for the chief. Do you have any stations now that do have some police service there that are on larger properties?
So you put me on the spot.
Like a substation?
We do. Not in a formal sense. I'm trying to think of some of our newer facilities. What we have done in some facilities in Temecula and Palm Desert and in some of our newer facilities, we have some extra office space that has been designated for patrol officer use for report writing so that they're staying in their community while they're on the beat. This, and in the discussions that we've had with Todd, I think his vision is outstanding, and this could be a model program in Riverside County if we're able to foresee his vision. I think it's good use of taxpayer money. I really do.
You mentioned paramedic truck, which kind of raised a concern because of the aging community that we do have here that come here. Would you be able to have a ladder truck and a paramedic truck on 2.5 acres, or would you need that 3 acres? Because that's a concern as well.
So there are so many considerations. I've got some notes here, and I know Chief Smith talked to you about these, but these are the considerations that when we work with Kyle and the city manager and whatnot for property. Corner lots are problematic because they limit your setbacks. Appropriate setbacks based on your design studies, turnaround and turning radius. The fire service prefers drive-through garages rather than backing large fire apparatus into a garage. That's asking for accidents, and quite frankly, firefighters are good at banging into things. So a drive-through apparatus for a 52, 54-foot tractor-trailer drawn ladder truck requires a pretty big turning radius through a backyard, but that's for a safety concern. Can it be done? Yes, but you're limiting things like public parking for access to the public for meetings. A lot of our facilities share a community meeting center. We have several that have been used with county DIF fees. We have one in Mecca. We have one in Good Hope that have an attached community center. We have one in Highgrove with an attached community center to it. So all of those things have to be factored in on what your end result and your intent for the fire station should be. At the end of the day, it is obviously the discretion of council, but we have designs that we like to see based on what your general plan looks like for your build-out.
Thank you, Chief.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments for the chief?
No, not for chief.
Okay, thank you,
for your
Chief.
time.
Do you have other questions for someone?
No, I just think that at this point, since we are doing the general plan and looking ahead, I think it'd be kind of counterproductive to pull back now on the safety. I think we ought to look at what we can as Beaumont be a model for, and what's best for the residents. And it's such an important thing. You know, we haven't had much, and I would have to support a 3, I think.
Do you want to amend your?
I don't have any problem amending my motion to go back to the 3 acres as provided in the Nexus study.
So I'll second the motion the way it was read without the condition of going to 2.5.
Councilmember Martinez?
Yes.
Councilmember Lara?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Carroll?
Yes.
Mayor White?
Yes. Item number 10. Do we have any public comments on 10?
We do not.
Item number 10 is the second reading of an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Beaumont, California, amending Chapter 302 concerning procurement of professional services of the City of Beaumont Municipal Code.
Mr. Mayor, since this item could potentially impact my firm and my role in the city at some time in the future, I'm going to recuse myself on it.
Honorable Mayor, Council Member, this is the second reading of the ordinance amending the purchasing ordinance for the professional services section of the code. In the last meeting, the ordinance was amended to lower the limit that can be awarded by the city manager to $25,000. So that's reflective in there, and there are some changes that were suggested to the contract, the number of the years, and how the contracts were renewed. That's also reflected in the second reading. Staff is recommending approval of the second reading. This ordinance will go into effect 30 days after, if it's approved tonight. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions or comments?
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to waive the full reading and adopt by substitution of title and ordinance of the City Council of the City of Beaumont, California, amending Chapter 3.02 concerning procurement of professional services of the City of Beaumont Municipal Code.
I'll second that.
Councilmember Martinez?
Yes.
Councilmember Lara?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Carroll?
Yes.
And Mayor White?
Yes. That moves us to item 11, which is second reading to repeal and replace Municipal Code Chapters 3.00 and 3.01 with the approval of resolution of the City of Beaumont in the matter of uniform public construction cost accounting procedures and ordinance amending Chapters 3.00 and 3.01 concerning bidding, contracting for public projects, goods, and services of the City of Beaumont.
Mayor and council members, similar to the other ordinance amendment, this one reflects as well that any item, any contract, any purchasing of goods over $25,000 will come to the city council. City manager will be authorized to approve up to $25,000 if the items are budgeted. Other than that, this is similar to the first reading. Staff is recommending approval of this second reading, and this will also go into effect 30 days from today if approved.
Questions, comments?
No.
Someone like to make a motion?
We have public comment.
Do we have public comment on this one?
None.
I'll go ahead and make a motion, Mayor, to waive the full reading and adopt by substitution of title only an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Beaumont, California, amending Chapter 3.00 and 3.01 concerning bidding, contracting for public projects, goods and services of the City of Beaumont Municipal Code.
I'll second that.
There's also a resolution. Do you want to do that separately? Or within the same motion?
See an action. I don't see the action.
Is it not on here?
I think item 11 is a
I
resolution, right?
apologize. It's not. It was a mistake on my minutes.
You were just testing me, weren't you?
I was.
Did it pass?
Let me do roll call then. Councilmember Martinez?
Yes.
Councilmember Lara?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Carroll?
Yes.
And Mayor White?
Yes. Item 12, financial report for the fiscal year 17-18 first quarter. Do we have any public comments on this item?
We do not.
Okay.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. We've gotten through the first quarter of the fiscal year, and I present to you a summary of financial documents in order to see where we stand as of the end of September of 2017. There are 3 reports. One is for the general fund, one for the wastewater fund, and one is a cash balance analysis report for you to review. Also included in the report were some comments that I had explaining some of the variances and some of the positions that we're at right now and what we expect to have on a go-forward basis. And then I also have 2 proposed budget adjustments to consider at this time. So if you have any questions.
Did you want to go over those budget recommendations?
Sure, I can do that. I just didn't know if there were any other questions before we got to the budget adjustments.
We might have them by the time you finish with the recommendation.
Okay. The first recommendation is related to the fee study that we had at the last meeting that was approved. With that, there will be additional funds available, estimated at approximately $600,000 for the rest of the year. But we needed to also look at the staffing of our planning, building, and safety departments. And so one of the recommendations is that for that budget adjustment showing the additional $600,000, we also then consider adding 2 positions to those departments in order to assist them with the level of work that they have available at this time. One being a building inspector to give them a 3rd inspector in order to cover all of the new construction that needs to be looked at, and a permit technician who will help with the paperwork here at City Hall to make sure that all of the permits are properly pulled and paid and sorted and filed.
And the expected increase, is that the 25%?
The expected increase of revenues is $600,000.
Okay.
So what I did originally was I looked to see, okay, from our budget for the year for building planning and safety, how much did we have budgeted and where did we land for actuals as of the 3 months? At that time, looking at that, the first part of the analysis, I show that we're short in revenues based on the expectation. It could be for a multitude of reasons. One could be because there was a huge number of permits pulled in June and almost none in July, so that could be just a timing issue. But taking a conservative approach and saying, okay, maybe we've over budgeted for those revenues, the first thing that this extra $600,000 needs to cover are shortfalls from our budget to actual, so that what we've already budgeted for expenses are covered. So I took that into account, just a simple annualization of the shortfall, and I removed that from the $600,000 of additional revenues first. That left us with $358,000 of additional revenues in the calculation, and for the 2 additional staff, the cost would be for the first year, taking into consideration hire dates of January 1st, the cost would be almost $130,000. So with $358,000 still projected as additional revenue, conservatively, we can still cover, from a budget perspective, the additional cost of personnel of approximately $130,000. So I wanted to be sure that whatever we have, actual results to date, taking the budget into consideration, looking at what the fee study had projected for additional revenues and the cost of any personnel, make sure that we weren't going to be budgeting into a potential shortfall by year end.
Do we know what the permits for October and this part of November have been? Are we accelerating on track with July and September and August, July, August?
I have not looked at the second quarter numbers yet for that. But I know that quite a few have been pulled because I've been monitoring our developer impact fees, and those have also been creeping up. And as that happens, that means there are permits being pulled at the same time. In July, we had none. We had no development impact fees at all. So they were all pulled in June.
And I know that it's hard to just assume we're at 25% of the year, therefore
Right.
25% of the budget. But are there places in the budget where you were surprised in additional revenues or additional expenses that are catching us by surprise?
Not too much. The one surprise that I actually had was that our public works revenue is higher than I thought it would be. So it's already higher than what we budgeted for the first quarter. There's just a lot of things happening now that public works is being run correctly. It's getting off the ground. It's properly staffed. It's got the oversight. So I think that's just got more growth potential in it than we anticipated. As for the rest of it, it seems pretty average. It runs like that. First quarter is really hard to tell, just because, you know, things can change so quickly after that. But we're monitoring the budget ongoing and making sure that everyone is staying within the parameters that were set for them.
I noticed comparing to last year, I believe it was in the sewer fund, wastewater funds expenses were way up, but I believe that's because of the design we're going through of the wastewater treatment plant, correct?
Right.
Okay.
We have a lot more in contractor services right now with that.
Okay. All right. That's all my questions. Ms. Carroll.
I just have, and how is the new software working in terms of helping you to stay on top of this when there's more money than you expected in certain pockets and then less in the others? And I know how cumbersome it was before because so much of it was a manual intervention there that had to be done. So just tell me how it's working out for you to do this with the new software.
It's working really smoothly, and I'm finding that not only can you just do the standard report, but I'm getting better at looking at things more specifically, targeting certain areas. And the other directors and the analysts in the other departments are getting much better at reviewing their own budgets and seeing what their numbers specifically look like. It's all a learning curve for staff. They've never had the ability to look at these things before. And now we get questions. Do we have budget left for this? Well, we've coded something here and it looks like it's eating up the budget, but not in this one. So what can we do? And we're working with them on that learning curve as well. But the first quarter, I think, looks really good. It looks like we're holding our own. We're staying right where we should. Revenues are down, but they're always down. The first quarter is never a big revenue source. The revenues have a definite cycle, and we haven't hit that stride yet.
Well, to clarify that, I wouldn't say revenues are down. I think one thing you have to be careful about
Not
is when you look
25%,
at
right?
this month, and you're comparing a current period with a year prior period, you may not necessarily be talking apples to apples because we are looking at year-end numbers that are attributed to that period of prior year versus this year where there may still be some additional revenues and costs to accrue. So it's a good benchmark, you know, to see kind of where we fit, but it's dangerous to really kind of look at them as a direct comparison, a mirror of one to the other. So, you know, as we finish out, and typically you get, 4 to 5 weeks into the following month before you're able to be able to realize the things that happened the month prior, if that makes sense.
It does.
Right. Then, just so that we go all the way through, the second budget adjustment is simply a capital project budget adjustment to correct what was probably just misstated in the original budget for the costs of a project, bringing it up to where it needs to be so that we can get that project completed. It may affect other projects as far as timing based on when the revenues are received that will cover those costs, but that's the second adjustment.
Question.
Sure.
Back on the building. How many inspectors do we have now?
Two, and then we have a building. Keith is building.
Official.
Chief building official.
Right, building official. Knew it wasn't an inspector.
And what's our response time on inspections? Do you know? Are we 24 hours? Are we 48 hours? Or
I don't think it's 24 hours. I know that part of the fee study, they looked at the staffing and the amount of time being spent at each site doing that. And I know that they'd said that we weren't spending enough time at some of the sites and we needed more people to spread that out.
Yeah, we try to target, I think, a 72-hour turnaround to respond to inspections. What we did find in our workforce analysis is that we're on average doing about 20 inspections per day. The industry standard really is closer to 14. And so, there's a concern about the speed by which our current inspectors are having to roll through those inspections. So really the recommendation pursuant to the fee study was to look at providing at least one more building inspector, one more permit tech, so that we can kind of get on top and process. And then we can spend more quality time doing some of those inspections versus, having to work through some of these as quickly as we are. But we're still going to have to supplement with outsourced service to kind of pick up some of those peak
That's kind of
inspections
where I was
and
going.
plan review.
Do any of our plan check contracts include building inspection services?
They do. They do. They sure do. And we do utilize them when we have some of those peak hours. And we have Ms. Stemming here who can address very point-specific questions.
Yeah, we have separate contracts for plan check and inspections.
Okay.
So you guys renewed those last year for a year, so you'll.
Have we been using the contract inspector at all to help increase or improve customer service with extended inspections or no?
Yes, we have been.
Okay. And I just use my experiences. We've had a contract inspector now for, well, we've had several, but we've had some for 2 years, and at that point, I end up adding a full-time position. Are you in a similar position at this time?
It hasn't been 2 full years since we've had them, but we've had them ongoing on a half-time basis. But we know from both the survey and other times that we're still not spending the full amount of time we'd like to spend on each inspection. We're still running from inspection to inspection.
Okay.
And we'd like to be more thorough and complete.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Couple of questions.
Mr. Martinez, go ahead.
Yeah, Ms. Taylor, maybe I missed this. Back up on the general fund, the $63,000 on the cost recovery, that's unfavorable.
Yes.
To explain that one more time?
I can. That $63,000 is related to services that were billed to an outside agency for things we did for them. This is just the reversal of the accrual. We have not received that payment yet.
Okay, that's
so
what
it looks backwards.
And then I saw a 0 on the projection, so I was concerned on that. So that's okay.
Right. Usually you have cost recoveries. They should come together and come to 0.
And then you mentioned the $7,508,000 for the Potrero funds. We did have a separate account for that. Is that what we talked about?
Yes, we do. That is in a separate bank account.
That was established, right?
Right. If you look at the third report, which is like a cash flow statement, if you will, it has reconciled balances and then it lists the accounts. Those are actual segregated separate bank accounts that we have. So you can see where we moved the $7 million in construction. It wasn't there at June, but it is there at September.
Okay, and then the last question I have, you talk about, for this cash flow, temporary cash flow, about available funds. What are our sources typically that we're using for these available funds as we move cash around until the revenue comes in?
Well, the pooled cash is where we have a lot of our cash funds all together. We have separate accounts for funds that need to be segregated for different reasons. So as long as the pooled cash and the LAIF accounts can support general operations, when we have the fluctuations in the revenues, then that's allowed. And then by year end, it's supposed to be positive again, which we fully believe it's going to be positive again. Okay. So it's just a temporary situation. We get our property tax payments. The first part of our property tax comes in December, January, right in that time period. So that hasn't been received yet.
Okay, and the mayor kind of already asked this, but you don't see any screaming alarms this early in the budget?
No. And at December, we'll do a much more detailed look at it to make sure that at the mid-year mark, we should have a good handle on all of the costs and revenues.
Okay, very well, thank you.
With the loss recovery agent, what outside agency is that?
I cannot remember for the life of me who it was, but I was looking at it earlier today, and we are following up to make sure that that comes in.
Okay, and regarding the Xenia Avenue street improvements,
Yes.
why are we 150, looks like we're 150,000 over what we had budgeted for it, is that correct?
I believe it's just that the budget was not correct when it was filled out, that there was an error in the budget document, because even when we went out to bid and we were talking to the engineer, the project engineer, it was never 300,000. It was at 450 to start with. It's just when we started I put the numbers into the system from the CIP document is when I recognized that 300,000 could not possibly be right. So that's why we're bringing that back.
Okay, and this is, we're moving it from the gas tax allocation. When do we start, or have we started receiving some of the gas tax? Or is that the Measure A money for January?
Now, this is the gas tax allocations, which we get on a monthly basis. We get a gas tax payment. And all it does is say, okay, of the gas tax funds that we've received, we need to allocate this much of the funds now for this project. So we have it available, and I can make that adjustment to it.
So it's a monthly, so I was leading to the question, are the gas tax money coming in as budgeted?
Yes.
Okay.
Gas tax monies are on budget at this point, and I'm keeping a close eye on that too, not only because Measure A will also may have an effect if the gas tax changes, maybe Measure A changes, and also then with whatever happens with SB1.
SB1, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions, comments?
I'm good.
Okay. So this is a receive and file and approve the budget adjustment. Someone like to make a motion on that? All right, well, I will move, this is item number 12, to receive and file, and I'll move to approve the budget adjustment as requested.
I'll second that.
Councilmember Martinez?
Yes.
Councilmember Lara?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Carroll?
Yes.
Mayor White?
Yes. And now we'll go to item 13, authorized reimbursement agreement between City of Beaumont and Beaumont Cherry Valley Water District for the replacement of water service laterals for the 8th Street resurfacing project. Do we have any public comments on item 13?
We do not.
Okay.
Honorable Mayor, Council Member, this item is to approve a reimbursement agreement between City of Beaumont and Beaumont Cherry Valley Water District. As you may recall, we are doing a project on 8th Street. We've done the sidewalks and we are in process of getting approval. In fact, we got the approval for resurfacing. There's a grant available for resurfacing of 8th Street. There's some gas tax that we're using as well. When we talk to the utility companies, we, as part of the project, we made sure that they're aware of our project that's coming forward. Beaumont Cherry Valley approached us and they said that there's about 35 lines, service lines to their meters that they would like to replace. So in discussion with them, we decided that it would be best if we added that to our project. They will reimburse us. We will add that as a line item to our project. If they like the prices that we receive, then they will, and if it's within their budget, then they will work with us to get those services done. It would keep them from coming back after the surfacing is done and repairing any leaks. They're also very high. The way these services are, they go up from the main line and then they turn towards the property. So they are very high. We may hit them as we're working, excavating dirt from that area. So this would help us make sure that we get new services in, we get new, and they're out of that area to work. There's also replacements of meter boxes along with that. There's a list of items. There's a cost estimate that's attached with the agenda item, and the final number will be determined once the bids are open. That's my report. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
When I went to the water meeting last week, they explained that our contractor is going to do the work and then the water district will reimburse us for that work, correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
And it's more expedient because that way we don't have to wait for them. Once we open up the street, we don't have to wait for their contractor to come and mobilize. This way the same contractor can have subcontractors. They'll do the job. and then we can just be reimbursed through this agreement.
And their board already approved the cost estimates for what we're looking at. Any questions or comments for Amir? Mr. Chopper? Oh,
Good.
all right. Can I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to authorize the reimbursement agreement between the City of Beaumont and the Beaumont Cherry Valley Water District for the replacement of water service laterals for the 8th Street resurfacing project.
And I'll second that. And Mr. Jocker, what's the time frame? When do we plan on starting, and how long will the project take?
The project will be out to bid shortly. We expect to start within 2 months.
Okay.
It'll, depending on how extensive this work is with the water services, I think it'll take another 2 months to finish.
Okay. Thank you.
And I'll do roll call. Councilmember Martinez?
Yes.
Councilmember Lara?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Carroll?
Yes.
Mayor White?
Yes. We're moving along pretty good, but we need to take a break. But let's make it a short 5-minute break. Be back at 7:30. 7:32, and we are on item 14. Authorized purchase and sale agreement for offsite habitat restoration from Riverside Corona Resource Conservation District for the SR 60 Potrero Boulevard Interchange Phase 1 project.
Honorable Mayor, Council Member, the item in front of you is to authorize purchase of 3.36 acres for offsite habitat restoration. As part of the Potrero Interchange project, we had to obtain Army Corps of Corps permit and the state 1602 permit. Those two permits required us to buy land for habitat restoration, and that's for the impacts that the project is causing to the habitat within its footsteps. So what we've done is we've gotten the prices from them. The price is $265,000 per acre to acquire the habitat. The total cost of acquisition is $890,400. And just to show that we have enough funds to cover the cost, we've attached a cost proposal on the second page, or a cost summary on the second page. We did open bids on this project on November 16, 2017, last week. The lowest bid is a little short of $14 million. We are going through the process of analyzing the bids, making sure that they are correct. We expect to award the contract second meeting in December for the construction of phase 1 and interim phase of the project. We've gone through, as you recall, we had done preliminary estimates that showed contingency, that showed the project design costs and construction costs, and they were all based on our estimates at that time. Since then, we worked through some of those costs. We now have more detailed costs. We know what it costed us to do the plan, phase 1 plans and specs, which is about $623,000. There's right-of-way acquisition. Then there is offsite habitat restoration, which is the item today for $890,000, $890,400. There is additional habitat restoration that will be part of phase 2. We can acquire that when we are in process of awarding the contract and going through the construction of phase 2 itself. There's utility relocation with Southern California Edison. There is also utility relocation of Frontier Cable. And then we have bid and construction support estimate about $400,000. And then construction management, we did award the contract a couple of meetings ago for construction management, which is about $1.8 million. And the construction itself is $14 million. So all that adds up to $21.9 million. We still have $2 million or so in contingencies. And we think the project will come in under budget. So with that, we're recommending the approval of purchase of this land. This will allow us to move forward and start the process of getting the bid package ready and for authorization and bringing it to council to award in second meeting of December.
Okay. Any public comments on item 14?
No comments.
Okay. Are there any questions or comments for staff?
I just had a question.
Sure, Mr. Martinez.
The report mentions buying credits. credits versus acres. I got a little confused when I was reading the report, or perhaps I was reading it wrong. Can you clarify, are we actually buying the acres themselves for restoration as a preserve?
So the way it works is on the permit puts a mitigation requirement. They put in a number of acres that we have to buy and restore. And there are land banks that do that. What they do is they buy large pieces of land, and those lands are those habitats are then restored, and then we are buying credits in that. We're buying, each credit is 1 acre, so we're buying one for, in this case, 3.36 acres of credit in the land bank. So city will not own it. We'll just be paying for that land to be bought, set aside for environmental purposes.
That explains it. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? This is a mitigation process for habitat restoration, basically, correct?
That is correct. Every time we impact a stream bed, we cause damage during the construction, and after the construction, there's alteration to the stream bed, and this is a mitigation for that.
And this is a program, my understanding, that is, it's not only countywide, but it's regional, where all cities who are doing these types of projects will buy into it to do the mitigation process, correct?
That's correct. It has to be approved program by the state and the feds to be able to buy into it.
Okay. Any other questions? So I'll move to approve item number 14, authorized purchase and sale agreement of land for off-site habitat restoration from Riverside Corona Resource Conservation District for the SR 60 Potrero Boulevard Interchange Phase 1 project.
I'll second.
Councilmember Martinez?
Yes.
Councilmember Lar?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Carroll?
Yes.
And Mayor White?
Yes. Item 15, employment agreement for assistant for city manager. I guess that's yours, Mr. Parr. Do we have
Sir?
any comments on this item?
We do
Public
not.
comments, okay. Okay.
Okay. In this year's budget, I had requested and council had approved the position of assistant city manager. So with the really beginning of this fiscal year, we initiated a search for this as well as other positions that we had out there, and really have been looking at a nationwide search. So after our publication, we've really had a little over 40 applicants that had responded to this position of really a wide array of backgrounds and levels of expertise. I had asked a senior review team to assemble and review the applications, as well as myself, to look at those respondents that had come in, and then to conduct interviews, and then provide some recommendations to me with regard to the positions that were out there. And so that executive panel actually went through that process to review. We compared and looked at a list of finalists, which were again then interviewed. Ms. Day was recommended as the preferred candidate through that process. And you can see some of her background there, but a Bachelor of Science from Texas A&M University, but a broad array of background in capital planning, operations, direct oversight of operations, budgeting, really a lot of the core things that we need some administrative assistance with, and I need some expertise in assistance. So, in discussing the need for this position in budgeting, we talked about a strategy for this community where it's time to stop looking back. We have to start looking forward. We have to start preparing for what the next step of this community is and where we're going. So there's some strategic planning work that needs to be done. A lot of detail work that goes into it. You got financial modeling, as well as all the other things associated with that. In addition to that, we're increasing operations. We're a fast-growing city, so we've got more police. We've got sewer plant operations that we're bringing in-house, and we're operating more efficiently. We're ramping up a road and street program. We've got the additional Measure A and SB1 dollars coming in, and so we need to program and need to make sure that those funds are being deployed and those resources and services are coming up the way they need to. Parks and Rec we've got growing needs there. We've got more parks coming online. And again, there's management, oversight, administration of all those things. Capital projects, we're really developing a very detailed CIP in conjunction with the Citizen Committee right now. So you'll be seeing, some results from there. But again, setting up is one thing, but continue to monitor, administer, prepare financially as well as operationally for those issues is another thing. Planning operations, we talked about tonight looking at building inspections and needing to add another additional staff to keep up with the demand. And again, recovering from all the cuts we'd made, we're trying to prepare and move forward. One of the things that we've started looking into, and there's been a lot of discussion in the community about wanting to develop detailed reports and detailed budgeting for every one of our CFD areas, so all of our subdivisions. And so we're developing those, but there'll be an administrative process associated with tracking and monitoring all those things. So all those are the types of things that, again, we need some additional horsepower here from the administrative side to help coordinate and bring all those things together. There's some things with this position coming in and having direct oversight of operations, meaning public works, sewer, planning, inspections, parks, and community services, frees me up to be able to turn my attention to other things that are equally deserving of time, such as strategic planning. Looking at our financial planning, we're in the process of developing a multi-year fiscal model. We're finalizing those final details on that, be coming to you. But we're also assuming a more regional role as a community, and there's demands required of that in terms of meeting with other agencies that we rely on and need to coordinate with, meeting with other communities that we have growing needs, and there are going to be growing and evolving issues between our communities that we need relations, and administratively there's processes in place to do. For example, Calamasa, we're talking to them right now about how to coordinate traffic signalization on Desert Line and Champions, for example. And there's a process, there's cooperative agreements and tracking of things that need to happen for all that. You've got a lot of things happening. On top of that, there's some expectation for economic development, for other things that need to happen within the community to stabilize and help the community grow. So, all those, and on top of that, preparing the base for the future, reuse water, looking at other core services that need to develop and come along. So, so this position really, again, begins to come and take over some of those operational issues that allow me then to be able to focus my attention on some of those other areas that are evolving and growing in terms of need and demand. And the city has got to start preparing and is establishing a foundation for what a city of 60, 75, 90,000 people will be. And so we're at a critical time, and we need the right staffing and the horsepower to help bring the things along today that are needed to help move the city where you guys want it to go into the near future. So the contract that's here is, again, modeled after the base contract that we've done for the other management positions. So it's structured similarly to that. The base salary is a little over $203,000 on the base salary. There are some transitory living expenses included with this, moving and transitory housing. We've got the basic at-will provisions here that we do with our other management contracts. So be happy to address any council questions that you may have for me at this time.
Any questions, comments? Sure, Ms. Carroll.
I very much appreciate that you need to be able to think farther out and to be able to direct yourself farther out, both in time and in distance from the community. You need to be able to be a player and understand what's going on more regionally, and to be able to interject yourself into that and to get a better result for the city. One of the things I would like to see considered with this role to offset some of the costs is to bring more potential grant money into the city. And it's been brought up before, but basically you've been overloaded with all of the other things that have been going on, and finance has been overloaded too. But I think that there's plenty of opportunity. I hear of grant opportunities that other cities have been able to take advantage of. I know that now that we're in WRCOG, we can use their grant writing services. But if it ends up to get more visibility with the assistant manager position, then if we can get more done within the city on a grant basis, that should offset some of the costs. And you just haven't been able to expand yourself into 3 people yet to get all of that done. So I'd really like to see, maybe that sort of brought into the mix early on so that we can get ahead of that, because a lot of those things require a long time schedule. So I think that would be a good offset.
So,
Go ahead, Mr. Lara.
So this position basically is going to sit on basically the CIP side of the house, which is the one that we're investing more money in at this point in time with the plant, road projects, trail project. And one of the things that, looking at some of these positions and salaries that I had concern with was that maybe the growth of the city not being considered, and it's difficult to kind of look and project that far out because we've been so caught up in the day-to-day lawsuits and investigations and things like that. So it's nice to see that you're looking in the future to help the city grow. Hopefully this will free you up to look at some of the more on the economic side, bringing some of the commercial opportunities to the city that we so desperately need. So I'll be looking for that. But I do appreciate your vision for the city. And it's difficult to see, I know, at this point, but we are moving, and there's a lot of growth potential here. Thank you.
Mr. Martinez.
Yeah, Mr. Parton, I'm always a little leery on top-heavy, expensive management. I think it has to do with the other public entity I'm involved with. But basically, for those needs of the personnel in the departments, is this position going to help us a little bit get a little closer to our service sustainability? And is it any way going to hinder those, for instance, the finance department that I believe still needs some staffing, those positions in any way?
Well, it'll allow me to give more direct time than I currently can into finance, so I don't sure if that's a help or a hindrance to them, but I think it'll be a help. But yeah, I'm looking for developing a team that is efficient and is really there to achieve the program objectives that we discuss and council establishes. And so the management decisions are really geared towards trying to establish that. Right now, I've got days where I've got constant traffic coming in the door. And then I've got additional phone calls. I need to reach out to you guys. Things happen. And so being able to cover those bases is extremely difficult. And so I'm not able to be there for staff, and to maybe provide some of the support that they may need or direction they may need in a given day. So this will really help to create sustainability and will create a continuation of programming and effort in the departments as we move on. So, always work pretty hard to try to make sure that we're moving in that direction.
Thank you.
I think the position's needed. I think that's why we budgeted for it, and I think we were all comfortable with it when we budgeted for it. But I have a couple questions about how you came to your choice. First of all, how many interviews? It says in here that there was about 40 respondents. How many interviews did the senior review team?
We narrowed down to 4 applicants, so we conducted those 4 interviews.
Okay, and the senior review team was not members of staff that will be reporting to this new position, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And how do you come to a cost of how did you start your contract discussions with Ms. Day regarding the cost? In other words, where did you come up with the 203? How did you get to that number?
Well, yeah, that's looking at our market survey that we had done and kind of looking at what our area communities are looking at. Looking at some of those benchmarking numbers, I knew what the range was. Also looking for a senior person. This cannot be a position that we're looking for somebody to come in and grow into, not a project hire. I don't mean that in a bad way, but somebody who can come in that knows what they're about, understands the dynamics of the things that we're dealing with, and so establishing the right range to get that right kind of person here was pretty critical. And in looking at the applicants that came in, we had, like I said, a variety. We had a lot of people on the financial side of the house, a lot of people on the operations side, a lot of engineering to look at as we went through. But again, looking for that package that came together, and there's a pretty unique skill set of things we were looking for. So this isn't a person or a qualification that you can just kind of grab somebody off the street and bring them in to start working on some of these things.
Okay. It's not our job to hire your staff for you. That's your job. And I think it's important that you are comfortable with who you're working with, and I think trust is a big issue. You worked with Ms. Day before, and that's one thing we haven't even heard from you about. Can you speak to her qualifications? Why you she left Kerrville before you did, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's right.
But she was also in Kerrville before you were.
That's correct.
Okay, so if you could sort of speak to her specifically and her strengths and where you think she's going to be best for City of Beaumont.
When I got to Kerrville, she was our Parks Director, Parks and Rec Director. Had come up through aquatics. As our city was growing there, we had created a deputy city management position. It was a position that was, actually, I shouldn't say we created it. It was a position that was there and it was established as part of position control. Prior administration had a different management philosophy in terms of structure. And so I came in and, had talked to council about the operational needs that we had that were going unmet. So I had promoted her to assistant city manager there. And through that time, we developed projects, capital plans. We executed hundreds of millions of dollars worth of capital projects, including major water and utility projects, reuse water projects. She had administered planning and engineering operations as well. So really had a depth of experience across the breadth of the things that are very similar to what we need here. We had worked together for about 7.5 years. And as she moved to Midlothian, had moved over there as assistant city manager there, and she's been overseeing a lot of the comparable type of efforts and programs that we're looking at here. So there's a significant background and track record of major successes, through her body of work.
Are you worried that one of our neighbors will steal her away from us as a city manager?
It could happen, but you hire the best people you can, and you want the best for those people. You can never go wrong by hiring the best and having good things happen to them. So I think it always comes back to the organization in a positive way. So, but she's a person, and one of the things you ask is how will she fit in here, I think. Very good personality, very straightforward person. So it's a person who will make a decision, will stick by it, who will be there that you can count on. It's a person that once council sets a direction, we'll work together and go get that accomplished. And I think personality-wise, we'll fit in well with the team that we have developing here.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments?
I just have one other one. Do you feel that, how are you going to get around a concern that has been expressed to me that she's not from California? She's going to have to learn about how things are done in California versus Texas, and you can address that because you've had to jump that same hurdle. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, you know, Texas is a great state. California is a.
It's not California, though.
California's a fantastic state. We've got a lot of great staff here, support staff. They've been fantastic for me. They've helped, been patient with me. They've helped train me and bring me along. And yeah, I know that they'll be supportive there for her. I've learned a lot. I have a lot better understanding of California law and processes. So there's a support mechanism here that will help guide. But some of the key things that we're looking for are, you know, managing a project and managing contracts and contract administration and working with environmental issues. There's a lot of similarity to a lot of those things and commonality to those types of things. No two contracts are ever the same. No two cities are the same. When you go from city to city, and you know, even in Texas or California, things are different. You know, and so we understand in this business that we need to learn and absorb and grow as we go. And that's part of the thing that's important. And again, we look for people that bright people, and you know, we looked at people from the East Coast, we looked at people from the West Coast, we looked at people, you know, really from all areas of the community, and interviewed some from those various different areas. So there's a good mechanism here. There's people here, a good core that will bring it together as we all learn together.
Okay. I move to approve the employment agreement for the position of Assistant City Manager.
I'll second.
Councilmember Martinez?
Yes.
Councilmember Lara?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Carroll?
Yes.
Mayor White?
Yes. Item 16, City Attorney invoices.
Since this affects my firm, I'm recusing myself from this item.
Okay. All right, so item 16 is approval of invoices for the month of October 2017 in the amount of $45,273.63. Questions, comments? Someone like to make a motion?
Do we have any speakers?
Do we have any speakers?
No.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve invoices for the month of October 2017 in the amount of $45,273.63.
I'll second that.
Councilmember Martinez?
Yes.
Councilmember Lara?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Carroll?
Yes.
Mayor White?
Yes. Item 17, council reorganization schedule and dates. I asked Mr. Barton to put this on our schedule so that we can be more proactive in our move to reorganize next month. I remember last time we brought this up, the discussion was regarding first week in December, second week in December. The argument was made that we needed to do it sooner the better. We ended up agreeing to try and do it the first week in December. Because of the election, we couldn't do it the first week in December. And I think we ended up doing it the second week in December, and then we reorganized the committees the first week in January. And I didn't see a problem with that. And, you know, I think that moving forward, we should stick with that plan, because I think, you know, we're always going to be, I think the first Tuesday is the election usually in November. And that's puts us in a position that it's not finalized by it's not even finalized sometimes by our second meeting in December. but I think it'd be more likely that it would be. So I wanted to get input from the rest of you and sort of put together a plan going forward in December. Any comments?
Question. So you're looking for reorganization on the 19th and possible committee appointments on the 2nd? Is that what you're asking?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
So we're dropping the 5th.
Correct.
Okay.
And then but I would like to go one step further, and our ordinance says in December. And I think we ought to just indicate it's second week in December.
Sure.
Second meeting in
Second.
December?
Second meeting in December.
Yeah.
Is that something we can do, or you're looking perplexed?
No, what I'm wondering is, would you want to memorialize that maybe in a resolution, maybe establishing council policy to move forward?
Yes, if that makes more sense.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think we can do that. And
Okay.
And then council can change it as you need to.
Sure.
Yeah.
And if for some reason the election's not certified by the second meeting,
Yeah.
we'll do what we did last time. So I think since it's known as far as who's going to be on council, I think we could bring our list of the different committees that we'd like to continue to serve on, or we're interested in serving on, to the next, get those to staff so that staff can get them into the agenda package for the 19th.
For the 19th.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
But I still think we're good going with assigning the committees on January, first meeting in January. That wasn't a problem last year, I don't think. You guys agree?
I think it was a good idea.
Okay.
I like
I think it was. There was only some of the committees do their appointing and their choosing, don't they, in December?
They do.
There were one or two that got changed, and then we were a little out of sync with that. But I didn't think it caused us a big problem.
No, and also you have a council member that's been in that position for probably a year, helping to make the decision for the committee. For example, RCTC does it in December.
Yeah.
And rather than have, if the assignment changes, rather than have someone that's their first meeting, trying to make a decision on, personnel as far as who's going to be leading the following year, I think it makes more sense that the one who's been there for the year.
I think the only time it's been a little cumbersome, it isn't a problem, it's been cumbersome, is if there's an election in that year and the person that's leaving isn't on the council, so then there's a little gap. But otherwise than that, it hasn't caused any problem.
Right.
Okay.
So you guys are comfortable with that moving forward then? Do we want to talk about the actual process at the meeting on the 19th? As far as what we did last time was we took nominations for mayor and went through them one at a time, and then we took nominations for mayor pro tem. Any reason to change that process? I know in the past sometimes, I think our first year, someone made a motion for both mayor and mayor pro tem in one shot.
It seemed a little more orderly, the way we did
Take
it
them one at a
last year.
time?
Okay.
Yeah. I
Okay.
agree.
But
All right, so we'll do that on the 19th.
So to recap then, on the second regular business meeting of December, you guys will consider your officers.
Correct.
And then the first meeting in January, you'll consider your board appointments?
Yes.
So the mayor will make the board appointments there. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
All right.
Got you.
And so we'll probably have a resolution on the 5th?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right. We'll move on to item number 18, notice of upcoming vacancies. Who gets to do this one?
Take this one.
Okay.
Mayor Pro Tem Carroll asked that we add this to the agenda last meeting about the vacancies. We also have to notice every year before December 31st of the upcoming vacancies, so this kind of worked out well. So this item is also a notice of upcoming vacancies, as well as kind of a plan as to how we're going to reach out to the community on the vacancies and how they can apply. So I'm working with our public information officer, Ashley, to get a application out on our website that you can fill out on the computer, on your phone. It's easy to fill out form-wise, or you can come pick up an application at City Hall for both the Economic Development Committee and the Finance and Audit Committee. And any direction, additional direction, we'll take also.
Just for correction, I'm actually on the Economic Development Committee right now.
Yeah, I'll fix that.
Okay. So is there anything that we need to do on this? Just receive and file? So how many openings do we have on the two committees? It looks like Economic Development, there's 2 vacant spots. Business community members?
And the Finance and Audit Committee, the only thing that I would note is that there's no alternates for that, so.
But we have a full committee there, but just no alternates, is that right? Okay.
Correct. The alternates weren't listed in the resolution.
Okay.
So that's why I left it off here. However, when you guys decide to appoint officers, you can decide at that point to appoint however many as alternates.
And we don't have any planning commission openings coming up this year, no terms expiring, right?
Correct.
Okay. And the appeals officers, that's all, it's just those 2? I thought there was another one that's not listed there.
These are the 2 that are applicable at this time.
Okay.
These are the 2 that are what?
Applicable.
There's specific forms that have to be filled out in order to be on this board, and these 2 have completed them.
So I move to receive and file the notice of upcoming vacancies.
Second.
I'm sorry, I missed a second. Is that Martinez? Okay, thank you. Councilmember Martinez?
Yes.
Councilmember Lara?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Carroll?
Yes.
Mayor White?
Yes. All right. Item number 19. Do we have any public comments on 19?
We do not.
Okay. Mr. Sherwood, I guess that one's yours, right? And you're welcome.
Thanked you yet.
What's that?
I haven't thanked you yet.
I know. You thanked me already.
Maybe Mayor and Council, we're going to discuss tonight are the park restrooms. Let that get passed out real quick. A minor family emergency, so I wasn't able to get that into your packet, but there we go. The restroom currently has 6 facilities, restrooms. Well, let me start this over. The parks currently have 6 parks with restrooms. We can go down the list real quick. Stewart Park, the restrooms are open Monday through Friday, 6:30 to 3:30. And there's a porta potty outside for weekend rentals. Going down the sports park, they're the same thing, Monday through Friday. We do close at 2:30. We have to close it when the high school lets out, and we have to close them down a little earlier on minimum days. Same with Fallen Heroes Park. Fallen Heroes Park, though, there is a key deposit that the public can come and get, and they can use those restrooms on the weekend. Same with Seneca Springs Park. Nicholas Park, the restrooms are locked by the HOA at dusk. We do open them at 6:30 in the morning. And then Rango Park just has porta potties. So that's where we are right now. The early closures at the sports park and Fallen Heroes are due to the vandalism from the school that lets out really close by. We have to shut those down before those school traffic comes down through there. It also can create a fight situation at the sports park restrooms. It's not a good thing to have open when the school's let out. So we do have porta potties on site if someone needs them. Sport leagues do use them. Again, the sports park is open. We can go with the biggest one first with all the youth leagues that use it. There is some downtime when the youth leagues are done, of course. And then we do close them. Like I said, we have to close them before the high school lets out and the junior high. And what we're stuck with. Currently, no staff works on weekends. We used to have guys come in on Saturdays when we had a work release program, and the work release people were here, then we would staff that, and then we would open and close the parks on Saturdays. we can bring that back. We don't have the work release on weekends right now, but we can bring that back, and staff, our on-call guy, can start picking Saturdays up.
Explain what you mean by work release.
It's a sheriff labor program. These are ladies and gentlemen that may have done something maybe just a little bad in town, and instead of paying their tickets, they work it off.
Okay.
So we get them during the week. We just have trouble getting them on Saturdays right now.
And how does this, do you know how this, our policy compares to banning Ukaipa?
I haven't got that far with it. I was gonna, if you want me to do that, I'll get in depth with that and I can bring it back right after the first of the year. We're getting into the winter months where we don't get quite a demand on those restrooms because we are closing most everything at dusk anyways.
Okay.
3:30 or 4, somewhere around there. Staff gets off at 4 o'clock, so that's why we're locking them down about 3:30. Yeah.
Go ahead, Ms. Carroll.
Rangel Park, where is that located?
It's across the tracks. Rangel.
Okay.
Spell it right.
Are there any of the parks that aren't on the list here?
No, that's the only ones with restrooms. The rest of the parks do not have them.
Okay, isn't there a park up in Tournament Hills that the residents have been complaining about doesn't have a
That's
restroom?
the one I thought, in Palmer.
Palmer Park has been discussed. There's no restroom, was not built at Palmer Park. It wasn't built at Trevino Park.
Okay,
That was previous administration's decision.
and I know they have the ball games there and a bunch of kids and some.
Yeah, the youth
kids
league,
still-
we had a youth league a couple years ago. I want to say it was Beaumont Youth Baseball did bring a porta potty into Three Rings Ranch Park. They paid for it, had it serviced, and that's what they used.
Yeah.
But you have several parks.
It's a real sore spot with the.
None of the parks in Sundance have restrooms. I mean, there's a lot of parks without. When you figure we have, I just went to list 18 or 19 parks, and you only have 6 with restrooms. But restrooms bring a whole other element. You know, it's not necessarily a good thing. It's it's pro and con. Vandalism's heavy. Stewart Park, we can talk about briefly. We have to close it down at nights. If not, who knows in there, what's in there, what's going on in there.
Right.
And that's the problem with some of them.
Well, okay, I'm going to say something that I'm sure is going to sound awful, but
Go ahead.
when we talk about spending $500,000 to do a park, we don't plan on doing restrooms in all of them? Am I not connecting the dots right?
Yeah, the
big ones do get them. I mean, like the sports
Okay.
park is a big park. That's
So
a
if it's
22 acre
$500,000 park, it's going to get a restaurant.
I would say probably yes. Fallen Heroes did. That's
Well,
the last big.
Yeah, $500,000's not a very major park
No,
project.
it's going to be average.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank
so-
you for
so-
putting it in perspective.
So if you look at, there's a 7.5 acre park that is being put together by Argent right now up in Fairway Canyons. And that's about $1 million design and about a $2 million construction project, which includes a bathroom.
Okay.
And it really depends on what's in the park and kind of the anticipated use of that park. One of the things that we have in our CIP is a master park plan project that would really evaluate our existing inventory, look at deficiencies that we have throughout our system, and then have some recommendations for what kind of capital improvements we want to make. But we know that we have a couple spots, and if I remember correctly, I think we'd set aside some dollars to try to do a couple restroom facilities in the next year or two in some of these key areas. And I think y'all have identified a park or two that we definitely need to look at, and so it's something to start thinking about. But a small neighborhood park that's got quick access to the surrounding neighborhood may not need a park, or a restroom, but something with playscapes, and once you start adding fields and things like that, you may want to consider restroom facilities. One of the things that we're looking into is what other retrofits can we do in the existing restrooms, fixed restrooms, to be able to help keep them open a little bit longer, maybe not have to do a lot of the human resource and the human resource costs associated with that. So, looking at other technologies. So, one of the things you have to be careful about is cameras. You can contemplate cameras, but I'm not sure. You have to be careful on where they're going to be placed in facilities like this. So, but certainly looking at automatic door closers, things you can schedule in time. they still are not zero maintenance. I mean, there's still costs associated with public safety to go out and inspect the parks. And so, we're looking at a variety of issues like that, of programming things that we can look at. It'd be nice to be able to have a restroom facility that can be open during normal park hours. So when the park's open, it'd be nice if the restrooms are there that they can be open. But, as Sherwood had suggested, there's a lot of other issues surrounding that, and there can be some significant costs, and not just manpower, just other issues that come along with vandalism and damage to the facilities over time.
Well, I can understand that, and and I know that the hours that the restrooms are open is certainly something that has to have a lot of thought put into it, and there's cost factors. But it seems to me that if we're going to do a park that you're going to have a baseball event at, and you expect families to show up to watch the kids play baseball, you're going to have a restroom. I don't see how you can have that kind of a combination. I mean, I had little kids. You sit in the bleachers, and they're going to say, I need to go to the restroom, and you can't get in your car and drive home. So I just really think we need to always be aware.
Right. I think if you look at the design, Mayor Pro Tem, at the Fallen Arrows Park, it is a smaller restroom facility, but they do have your privacy walls built on the outside, which is a concrete wall, which enables us to lock the restroom open. So you don't have a problem of someone getting locked in there or something happening with the door closing or unforeseen things that could happen. So that's the type of facility we really need to look at going on in the future with. Something like the sports park, we lock them open because there's a privacy wall. You can't see down into them. So that's the kind of things I think we need to look at.
Okay. Thank you, Bob.
And then, like I said, self-closing doors are an option. We'll just have to see if it's feasible and if we're able to do them in the way some of these are built.
And, I brought this up when I first got on council for probably the same park you're talking about, Fairway Canyon. And it's our decision. If we decide to move forward and we want to start having restrooms in parks and we weigh the cost of how we keep them open, what we put in there, it's council's decision. And I, at that time, made a commitment that I was not going to be approving parks that didn't have restrooms. But it really it's something we have to get to planning to understand that that's the direction we want to go in. So that's why I wanted to bring this discussion up, because I hope that we can move to the ability, at least on the weekends, to be able to keep some of the more busy parks open. It's the problem with the field in Fairway Canyon. What's the first one as you turn on to Palmer from Cherry Valley?
Tournament Hills Park is the first one. Trevino
It
Park.
has a baseball, not the other side, but the one that has
Palmer Park.
Yeah, and the neighbors, the people who live adjacent to that park, have had to deal with some disgusting things because not having a park there. But we can't. I don't know that we would have even approved a restroom there for that size of park. Right. But there may be other ways to address that issue. So I want to bring that up because I did want to have the discussion. I like the idea of looking for other ways to keep them open.
We'll bring some ideas back.
Yeah, and maybe see what Yucaipa does. Okay. I don't go to their parks that much, but every time I've been there, the restrooms have been open.
Sure.
And I know that ours are open. Seneca Springs, you have to close it early also because of the...
Seneca Spring, well, staff leaves at 4 o'clock, so it's locking down at 3:30.
Oh, okay. And the specific request I had was for the weekends on Seneca Springs. Right. There was an issue there. So. And
I believe it was the same gentleman we had talked to. He can come and get a key. We can rent a key out to people, and that's why we put that on there. It's on the city webpage. If we get too many keys out there, too many lost keys, or the thing being left open, then of course we'll have to rekey it. We've talked about maybe putting a cipher lock on there, which is a 5-digit combination, and
I was changing it. A lot of restaurants. You go up there and
changing it monthly. There's different avenues we can do at that certain park.
And then they could actually even call a number and say, what's the number for this weekend?
And it doesn't have the privacy wall, and I think we would need to install it because, again, you've got a one-door situation there, and it is kind of scary.
Okay.
Go
ahead.
What's the feasibility of putting a porta potty or something like on Palmer? Because the heat I'm getting from some of the residents around there is when softball starts up and you got the girls softball, and the coaches have been complaining because there's nowhere for the girls.
Right, and see, at
least during a peak season like that, we don't have to have it.
Politically correct here. we've mentioned it to Beaumont Youth Baseball, who uses this once a month, one month a year, and then they're gone. They basically all go to Noble Creek. So we've suggested to them that they rent porta potties and drop one at each park. You know, can the city pick that expense up? I'll have to bring it back to Todd as a budget item. But I mean, the youth league, they're really the only ones using it. You know, yeah, the residents may on the weekend, but we definitely can do that.
But I think the problem with them was it was practice. It wasn't games.
It's practices,
Yes.
and they practice heavy that first month, and then they go into games, and they really don't practice on the city parks.
Is there,
They disappear.
would it be feasible to work with them to have those practices taking place at Seneca Springs and then?
They take the entire city for that month.
Oh, they do?
Every
Yeah.
field we have is Beaumont Youth Baseball for the month of February.
Okay.
Soccer and football's about squeezed out, or rugby.
Okay.
Well, the thing I get from residents is like, we're paying a park fee, so why don't we have any services? And
So we
that's
definitely
what I
can bring
have to
back,
deal.
we can put a porta potty in each park if that's.
I mean, it's something to
what
discuss.
we wanna
You
do.
know, I know there's pros
Well, I
and
think
cons.
during the month of February, I mean, again, I would think the park should, or the baseball should contribite to that. It shouldn't be just the city's responsibility. But,
share analysis.
yeah. Okay, any other questions?
Yeah, one of the other things, Bob, that I know that some of the developers are doing are the prefabricated bathrooms that they're just dropping in parks.
That's what we have at Nicholas Park.
Okay.
It's a beautiful concept, and I'd like to see if we can get a hold of those plans to march it and move forward. I think we do have them, and that would be a good one if you decide you want to drop these in another site.
I'll see if I
get the
can.
price on them, but it's a great idea.
Why is that a better option than?
It's
Is it more
cheaper
just-
cost because they can be prefabricated in an off-site, and then they trailer them in on a back of a.
We drop them and we hook them
they
up
pick
with
'em up
sewer
off
and
the
we're
crane.
done. Sewer and water, and it's pretty much done.
They sit them right on top of the slab with the plumbing already set.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you, because I've done that in the past. I've installed a prefab restroom facility. It wound up costing about the same as a site built, but the maintenance of it, you know, so
Yeah.
it's like poured concrete typically.
Right.
They can do all sorts of styles, but you can hose it down. You know, there's some other, they're built to withstand things that a site built maybe can't. But we may not save dollars in terms of the construction and purchase of it, but definitely it's probably got more longevity to it, you know, than others may.
I'll see what I can find out.
Yeah, if you would, please.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
And we'll move on to council reports, right? Okay, any volunteers to go first? Mr. Lara, you look eager. I'll let
Yeah.
you go first.
I had nothing to report tonight. Although I am, Bob, I just want to thank you and staff. I know that they all pitch in for the Thanksgiving dinner, and it's always a fun thing to take part in, and I appreciate you extending that invitation to us as well. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, Mrs. Carroll.
Sorry I missed your luncheon today. Looked like you had a very nice one. I've been to the other ones, and today I felt bad that I missed it. I did go to the Rotary serving of the senior Thanksgiving dinner, and they had a great turnout, and it was very nicely done, even better than the year before. So hopefully every year it even gets better. So that was good. I went to a Caltrans and a meeting over in San Bernardino about the rail plans that were being done for the state of California and where all the connections were being done. And it is, there's a link online to the presentation, which I'll send you an email with the link, and then you can share it with the rest of the council members. But it was an interesting presentation. It really was a little bit more laid back than I wanted. I wanted them to be able to tell me more and to answer more questions. It was very laid back. I brought back the city manager one of the booklets. There's another booklet that we can ask for later that's much more comprehensive. But one of the reasons I went was because of the potential rail link that's going out to the Coachella Valley and the discussion over a potential stop that's on the way somewhere in the pass area, potentially. And They have not decided that, but they did say that it is in the EIR stage. So that means that they're getting close probably to looking at alternatives. So I'd like to make sure that we stay on top of that and find out if it's a good option for Beaumont to do some early investigating of how that would fit in with our general plan. So that's it.
Mr. Martinez.
Well, in honor of Veterans Day past, I just want to thank all our veterans for their service and sacrifice. My grandfather was World War II, and my father's Vietnam, and my father-in-law's Korean War. So I surely have experienced their sacrifice, and I just want to extend my sincere appreciation to all those men and women who have served in the past and currently serve. So thank you.
Thank you.
Did I take your thunder?
No, you actually you added one more item. I got a whole bunch tonight. My son is in the Mesa View Middle School marching band, or actually band, and they perform at the Yucaipa Veterans Day ceremony every year. And I had someone ask me, another elected official, what is Beaumont doing for Veterans Day? And we didn't do anything. And I know that we usually do the wall dedication, and this year we didn't have any to dedicate. But at the end of the Veterans Day presentation in Yucaipa, Councilman Welch came up to me and said that Beaumont and Banning ought to do something like this. And I think it might be something that we should look forward to trying to do next year. I think, we have Stewart Park would be a great venue to do it. We have the music from the high schools, and whether we do it in Banning or Beaumont or flip back and forth, I think it would also help to bring our two communities get together, which is something that we're still struggling with. So I know you're on the Veterans Committee?
Yes.
But I think we really ought to look at doing something with Banning, especially since they are, making this suggestion now, because they don't have anything as well. And so that's what you reminded me of. Thank you on that, Mr. Martinez. I went to the RCTC meeting. It was a very eventful meeting. John, you would have found it very entertaining because Beaumont put together our CIP plan. We rejoined the TUMP program. We did everything that we were supposed to do as part of our WRCOG settlement, as part of our agreement to qualify for our Measure A funds, and that item was on the agenda to be approved, that Beaumont receives our first Measure A money in January, which would be $370,000. A motion was made to approve it. Our neighbors in Calamasa, Mr. Councilmember Hyatt, made a stand and said that Beaumont was not entitled to the Measure A money until WRCOG had determined where all the money that is coming from loss recovery was determined where it would go. And he implied that it should go all to the pass and maybe Beaumont shouldn't get any of it. And I just thought it was Mr. Hyatt being Mr. Hyatt, so I didn't say much. And then I saw that it started getting a little bit of traction. And so I put my name in, asked to speak, and right after someone else seconded that motion, then someone made a motion to 60-day continuation, which meant that then we would not be deciding on it until January. I'm still got my name in to speak. The chairman was getting a little bit flustered. There are 4 or 5 people. He said he wasn't going to let anyone speak. They were going to vote on the continuation motion, and then he let everyone but me speak. Then he said, "I've had enough. No one's speaking anymore." They passed the continuation to do it 60 days, to delay the money by 60 days. And it was about a 20-4 vote for the continuation. And then I got to speak. And that's when I explained to him, answered some of Mr. Hyatt's concerns, explained to him what we had gone through, what our community has been through, and what we have done to rejoin the region and also try to make everybody whole. That was getting a little bit of information. The chairman, one of the supervisors, recognized he had voted for the continuance when he wanted to vote against the continuance. It's one of, well, what does a no vote mean? What does a yes vote mean? So then what happened was Ann Meyer spoke up, and she told the RCTC that they needed to understand the continuance is already passed. And she spoke up and said, you folks need to recognize that some of your projects may be affected by your decision here today. And everyone's like, oh no, what about our money? What about our projects? So then everyone's in a fluster trying to figure out what to do. They then did a thing I hadn't seen before. You've probably seen this, is they made a motion to reconsider the previous motion. So then, again, no one knew what a yes vote meant, what a no vote meant. So that passed, flipped. It was 20-4 to reconsider the continuation. They voted on the continuation, and that also passed, or that failed 20-4. And so they went back and voted on the original motion, and that passed 20-4. Calamasa, Banning, Eastvale, and I think Desert Hot Springs, Lake Elsinore, were all voting against Beaumont receiving our Measure A funds. But that happened. It was about an hour process for this. And it was something the chairman, which was Tavalone, said that it was the second most complicated issue he's ever seen come before him. And it was all because you're going to get a kick out of this. Mr. Hyatt's argument to begin with was, well, you guys just put this big warehouse with all these trucks on it. And you also are not contributing to the Cherry Valley interchange, which you remember we approved a 2 million design contribution to the Cherry Valley interchange. And our council was the only council voting against the warehouse from
Isn't that
day one.
for all the Calamasa trucks that are going to be on
Yeah,
the jet?
exactly. So anyways, we still have a long ways to go to rebuild the trust of our communities, but I'm at the point now where we've done everything that we can, and we need to continue to move forward. And if they're not going to come along, then that's their decision and their choices at this time. Then we had the mayor's breakfast on Friday. It's the League of Cities Division Mayor's Breakfast, and we had some legislation issues come up, and some ideas were brought forward. Our county really is not taking the lead in getting our voice heard for legislation. And there's some issues like SB1 that some of us may not vote for, but we know how they're important to the city, and we struggle with those decisions. Right now, the league has 5 representatives on the executive board. Our representative is pretty much Linda, what's her last, Krupa, the mayor of Hemet. And she told us that it's important that when the League of Cities determines what issues they're going to take up next year, that they hear from us. Because if they don't hear from us, she's going to speak on what she thinks is right. So she brought that up. And then the mayor from Temecula, she brought up what they're doing. We need to have more of a presence in Sacramento, not just when we need something, and not just when everyone's going up together. We need to start to build a relationship and a presence in Sacramento. What Temecula has done, and I'd like, with your guys' consensus, to put this discussion on a future agenda, is they've set aside about $5,000 for travel expenses to regularly send council members up to go and speak to different legislators throughout the entire year. That way, we're in a better position to go up when we need something, because we've already built those relationships with the folks up there. So I'd like to put that on a future agenda if you guys are comfortable with talking about that.
Sure.
Yeah, the mayor of Temecula mentioned to me about the presentation that she was going to be doing at that, and she's talked to me in the past about that effort, and I think it's a great effort. So I think it's
we'll talk about it
a really good idea
on the next agenda item.
Yeah.
And then I had my meeting that you guys authorized me to have with our neighboring mayors regarding the annexation, master annexation agreements. And I met last week with the mayor from Banning, San Jacinto, Hemet. City manager from San Jacinto was there as well. It went really well. They were very surprised. No one recognized what a master annexation agreement was. No one realized that we're only getting 25 cents on every dollar property tax, and the county is keeping 75 cents on every dollar, and they're supposed to be providing services for that 75 cents. And I was surprised at how shocked everyone else was that we had raised this issue and they weren't aware of this. And the conversation led to the idea of, you know, our annexation agreement is 40 years old, 30 years old, 35 years old, and we've built 40,000 homes, all under this master annexation agreement that the county should have been providing services for 20 years plus. So they're very interested in watching what we do. I think Mr. Pardon's going to bring an issue forward on a future agenda regarding following up on this study that we authorized him to have done. The study hasn't been authorized. The research into doing a study was. And the other 3 cities told me that they were going to be going back to their city managers and their council. And then they don't believe we should stop with just 4 cities. They believe that once you start adding up the millions of dollars that the county has kept of our property taxes that they have not used for services that we should be receiving, that those numbers will just be enormous once you start adding up multiple cities. So I think there's some good traction going forward on that. And that's all I have. So we'll move now to the city treasurer's report.
I have nothing to report this evening.
Okay. And the clerk report, please.
Very briefly, in the month of October, we had 50 public records requests, and all have been responded to, and it took 12.5 man-hours, or woman-hours.
Thank you. Well, for the number.
Yes.
Okay.
You're welcome.
That is something we need to keep track of and total up and get a good idea of what our public records requests are costing us.
Right. We'll try to bring this every month, probably the second meeting
Okay.
of
Great.
every month, and give you an update.
Thank you.
So you said all public records requests have been fulfilled?
The 50 that we received in October have been responded to.
And do we have any outstanding besides the one that we're doing a redaction on? I know that's kind of an ongoing one, but do we have any others that are outstanding?
From October prior, that's the only one that's outstanding, yes, the reduction.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right. Maybe we could start a pool on what we think the public record request will be tomorrow morning. Help you get a head start. Okay. We'll move on to the city attorney report.
I have nothing this evening.
Okay. And the city manager report.
Oh boy, the highlight of the evening, I know. We did, a few staff meet with representatives from SoCal Edison. They've got what they call the East of Devers project, which is a replacement of the overhead power lines. So there's some information that their public information officer is going to provide to us so we can help get information out to everybody on what that looks like. So, but that will be a significant piece of work that will come through the community as part of that overall project. So it's, I think, if I remember correctly, it's about a 4-year-long project to install new towers and to put those lines together. But there's currently through our community 3 separate lines. So you've got the tall middle tower and the 2 wooden structure lines to either side. So they're going to condense those into 2 taller towers instead of the 3 that are there. So one of the things we discussed was opportunities to work with them on developing some of those areas as green belts also, to potentially try to create some additional green belt connections within the community. So, so hopefully we'll continue to work on looking at that. But more than anything, just want to kind of let you know that they were here. They're proactively trying to communicate what that impact looks like. And there's some graphics. There's some good graphics that they have that give you a pretty good perspective on what the new looks like compared to what the current systems look like out there. The mayor failed to mention that I think you'd already created that linkage with banning on that veterans, the VA event you're talking about. And I think there's supposed to be a mayoral a cappella sing-off.
Oh, really?
Yes, included with that. So fortunately...
There'll be a new mayor.
There may be a new mayor that gets to do that. So looking forward to that. The press is being prepared for that as we go. So
I guess before we choose our mayor, we need to have auditions.
yeah. So have you seen the cartoon Sing? The cartoon movie Sing?
Turn our chairs and.
So,
Are you done?
No, sir.
Okay.
A couple of things real quick. We've got a couple RFPs that we're working on pursuant to some prior council directions. So the fueling station design, so we're looking to have that RFP out on the streets here very soon, probably within the next week or so. And then we talked about trying to solicit proposals for lobbying services, both at the state and at the national level. So that RFP is being prepared by Public Works staff, and again, we plan to have that out on the street in the next probably 2 to 3 weeks. So we'll have some information to bring back to you on that. So with that, happy Thanksgiving to everybody. May get a chance to see some of you before Thursday, but if I don't, happy Thursday.
Thank you. Okay. Future agenda items, I spoke to that one about the considering some kind of strategy for reaching out to our legislators. Also, the other thing I'd like to do, and either I think staff could follow what's going on at RCTC. I don't know if they also do it at RTA. There's always a part of the agenda where I think it's Aaron brings to the RCTC the different issues. And it would be nice to be able to go back to RCTC and say, Beaumont as a council is not in favor of SB1 or whatever legislative issue is coming up. I can bring those back as long as I'm on RCTC, and we should all bring those back. But I think the timing of us bringing them back is not going to be as quick as if staff could sort of monitor the agendas that are coming forward, or at least even more proactive, be ready with legislative ideas that we can take to those committees, because we need to take more of a role on those committees as well.
So we'll just put kind of a generalized item at the terminus of the agenda that just says maybe legislative updates.
We need to have the ability to talk about them, to see where we all stand on some of these issues, and so that also the community can weigh in as well if an issue is very important. I mean, there's some huge issues that are coming up next year.
So it needs to be posted for action. So it'd be something there to be able to review and to take action on that.
Okay.
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 And that'll be a standard standing item that we have on the agenda.
Correct.
From here on.
I think so, if you guys are comfortable with that.
Yeah, that's a good idea, Mayor.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, I had 8:08. I missed that.
8:15.
8:15. 8:48.
Oh.
Actually, it was 8:40. I just added.
I'll adjourn at 8:45.